Welcome to the first official episode of New Money Talks, where we talk all things new money. And I guess what that means is that we've never gotten any handouts in life, just like you, most likely. If you did, good for you, but we didn't. And so we're going to talk about, how to build successful businesses in 2022 and beyond. We'd like to think that we've done a decent job at doing that. But that's kind of the objective of this podcast, is to show you guys how to do that through our lessons, our trials and tribulations, in addition to all the guests that we bring on that are going to be in all different types of verticals and industries and things of that nature. We actually already filmed this once, but we had some technical difficulties. So
kind of a mess. Yeah.
Please note that this is our first go at this. We're not full-time podcasters yet, but we're getting there. So sorted through all the technical difficulties, but we're here now. So before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, of course.
Like and subscribe, comment, the whole nine.
All that good stuff. We'll have our social media links somewhere in the either in the description or pinned in the comments, something like that. When we fill those out, they're probably not even completed by the time you're seeing this, but hopefully when you are, they will be. So give those a follow as well. But anyways, just kind of diving right in. Again, this is our first episode, so don't give us too much shit. We're still figuring out the ropes. Our main objective here is that we have so many business ideas. We have so many. We have a lot of experience in a lot of different businesses. We've met some of the coolest people in the world that a lot of times you guys might not be able to meet. And so our objective is to share their experiences, our experiences, to just get some ideas that are in our head actually out there, so that maybe you guys can go and roll with them and hit the ground running, because God knows we cannot put more on our plate than what's on it right now, let alone the podcast, but here we are. So anyways.
Some intros. We should do that, right?
Yeah. So you're going to be seeing a lot of us. So we'll give a quick intro. I say quick. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'll start off with me. I guess we came up in a somewhat similar position in terms of just where we grew up and like how our parents raised us for the most part. But we both grew up in Bergen County. I guess I'll start with myself. We grew up in North New Jersey, so right across from New York City. Although I personally go there maybe once every 2-3 months, not that often. We're so close,
but we stay away.
Yeah, it's like, it's one of those places that you like visiting, but you probably couldn't see yourself living there. I think you could probably agree with that.
100%.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll talk about pre-college, college, and post-college, because we both did college. He graduated, I didn't. I'm the degenerate of the two. But prior to college, I think we both figured out that we wanted to do entrepreneurship at a pretty young age. We were fortunate enough with that. So even back in middle school, we were hustling, like selling candy. It's like the cliche story of every entrepreneur.
Back in the day.
But I mean, it's real. Like that's what we actually did. And we would, before school, we'd get up, we'd go buy in bulk, and we'd be like literally the candy plugs at our school, because the only thing that was on our mind was like money. Everyone else was like girls, this, that. Like, don't get me wrong, we had a fun time, but those things just naturally came to us.
Yeah, we were literally counting quarters in our science class. I remember this.
Yeah, we were, and like even the teachers would buy from us, just because that was our mentality. It was like we weren't from a scarcity mentality. We were always of an abundance mentality. So we were like, how can we go out and get it even at a young age? It's like, our parents weren't giving us $50 to just go to the mall. We had to work for that, and so that's what we did. That's where we kind of started, a little bit of our upbringings, and then. Fast forward a couple of years, for me personally, I had a disconnect with entrepreneurship. I was always a hustler, but I think being a hustler and an entrepreneur are they can be two different things, depending on how you integrate the two with each other. But, I was shoveling snow, I was mowing grass, I was doing everything that you possibly could to make money at an age where people didn't take you super seriously for like, a more kind of, I guess, professional job, right? Like I'm not going to be some coding expert for a big company. At 13 years old, when I'm still figuring out like what I want to do in high school, and I'm like chasing after girls and all this stuff.
Just gonna shovel snow.
Yeah, exactly. But you do what you can. So you worked hard, made some money, and I was able to like, pay for a lot of my shit through that. I'll buy new soccer cleats, buy new clothes, like whatever it is. Neither of us were very materialistic, but again, it's kind of goes back to that theme of like no handouts, right? That's why we're New Money. We never got any handouts, and so we had to work for kind of everything that we've earned for the most part. And so yeah, that was kind of pre-college, just figuring out what the hell we wanted to do. And for me personally, I always liked kind of playing around with things, whether it was like an airsoft gun or like a BB gun, or like figuring out how to take things apart and kind of put them back together. So I was always figuring out how things work, how to solve problems, how to take things apart, put them back together. So after taking apart a couple of things, figuring out how they work, or pieces of technology, my parents were like, engineer. So I'm like, me not really knowing what I wanted to do, but always knowing that I wanted to solve problems. I think that was like a big thing that I found out from a young age, because I always liked math, which is really weird. I don't know if you were more mathematically inclined.
I wasn't big in school, so it is what it is, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like I didn't like much, but like math I actually didn't hate. And so solving problems is very applicable in business, but I figured out I like to do that. I figured out I like to kind of figure out how things work. And I think both of those things are very applicable in business, figuring out like how things work, whether it's operations, marketing, whatever. But anyways, without going on too long, I went to college, right? I went to college for, I did D1 track and field, and I loved every bit of the athletic component of it, but I also obviously went for the academics. And after a year of doing that and sleeping 3-4 hours a night and just not enjoying the experience at all, I said, let me pivot to a different school. So I started at NJIT, which is a small like mechanical engineering, or it's a STEM school in New Jersey, and it's just, it was not fun. I met some great people through the athletic department, but didn't have much of a social life. It was just a lot of like STEM majors, as you can imagine. And so the only enjoyment that I got was out of the track and field for the most part. But I pivoted to Rutgers, New Brunswick, and that was a much bigger state school. So I got a little bit more of the social life. I had an entrepreneurship minor. I totally pivoted majors. I thought I wanted to go into physical therapy. Turns out that entrepreneurship minor, I had some professors that were just millionaires, and they were just doing this for fun, because that's all I like. And you can jump in here too, because you had some.
Yeah, like it's not, especially in college. Depending on what school you go to, you definitely find some professors who really made it, and they kind of want to give back, kind of like a hobby. They feel good, stuff like that. And I remember, Kyle, when you were at I think it was Rutgers, right? Yeah. When you were at Rutgers, like I know you had a few good professors there. You took entrepreneurship classes, and that was kind of similar to the time that like I think we found ecom.
Yeah.
So I keep going the story, like that definitely. Yeah. Like, went to ecom and everything too.
It's interesting though, because for the most part, I think both of us, it's not that we would never advise people against going to school, but we would advise you to not let other people set the curriculum for you, right? So take what you're learning and figure out a way to apply it to the real world, right? So a lot of times you're not going to utilize Calc 2 in any type of business or entrepreneurship, but it's the element of being able to solve the problem and knowing that you can do the homework, you can do the work, and you can actually pass and you can get through it and survive at the end of the day. And like that's what entrepreneurship's about. It's about fucking survival, like if we're being honest. Yeah, so that's what I learned in these conversations with professors like that who had $15-20 million net worths, and all they did was sell patents 20 years ago, and they literally have nothing better to do than to teach other kids how to do that, to make sure that they that they succeed. So it's like, on some professors that you have in business, it's the reason why they're there is because they've had a lot of unsuccessful businesses, but arguably you're going to learn a lot from their failures and lessons, sometimes even more than what you might learn from someone who's successful and might have been like a one-hit wonder, right? Or got lucky on a brand evaluation, or got a patent that was really good, like whatever it might be. But anyways, again, not to go overboard, I found that I did not want to continue school because I picked up this bit of entrepreneurship, and my family was like, they were like, hey, can you pitch in on some bills when you get a chance, because we're not doing entirely well off. Again, going back to the theme, new money, right? Like this, no handouts. And so when I was in college, I was like, how can I help them, and how can I do track, how can I do engineering, like 12-hour work days, 5-6 hours of track practices, plus figure out a way to like make some money so I can like pay tuition, pay off loans, help family, things of that nature. So I got into business. Probably one of the worst things you can do when you have like no money is just like dive into a business, put everything into it. But neither of us are quitters. We like, from a young age, we were always just tunnel vision. We're like, this is going to happen no matter what. It was already written. It's just time had to kind of catch up, right? Like it was already written in time. We just had to kind of wait it out, and time, was on our side for the most part. But yeah, I basically got into e-commerce. This kid was one of the first people to introduce me to it, and we were kind of just fooling around with it. We didn't really take it too seriously until we saw the money that could be made there, right? Like,
yeah, it's kind of nuts. Like, I think I could go into a little intro too here, kind of shed some light on that. But similar story to Kyle. Yeah, we grew up in the same town. We know each other for like 20 years at this point too. So similar backgrounds. Like our town's like 1 square mile. Like how big's the whole town?
Yeah, it's 1 square mile.
Yeah, probably like less than 5,000 to 6,000 people.
You can get from one side to the other in like a 10-minute jog.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, there's like a 1 mile run in our town that they do every year, and like you just run around the town. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, we grew up in the same town. Went to like elementary school, middle school all together. And I think my entrepreneurial business thing started happening around high school. I'd say like probably sophomore, junior year of high school. Me and one of our other buddies, I think we'll probably touch on this later on, but like we have a good core group of like, I don't know, how many of us is there us? Like 4 or 5 of us?
Yeah, 5, maybe 10 on a good day.
10 on a, yeah. But like there's a core group of like 4 or 5 of us that all like have some type of like business, whether it's like an e-commerce, like some guys have a brand agency, stuff like that. So this all kind of started back in like high school, like sophomore, junior year. Around then, I started a like coding boot camp. So we were teaching kids grades 2nd through 8th grade, I think, how to code. We taught over like 4,000 to 5,000 kids in around 2 years how to code, pretty much building like basic websites with like HTML, JavaScript, CSS, stuff like that. And that was like my first kind of taste into business. This was before we even knew what e-commerce was. Like I didn't even know we didn't even know what Shopify was, right?
Yeah, I mean probably what, like our junior, senior in high school.
Yeah, I honestly wish we knew what Shopify and like ads were back then. We would have it'd be even. But anyways. Yeah. So I was doing that with one of our buddies, and like that kind of like pushed us into like getting into college, stuff like that. I wasn't a fan of school at all by any means. Like we played a lot of sports back in the day. Yeah. We played soccer, baseball, basketball, college did track, stuff like that too. So a lot of time on sports. But I think as we got older, we were like, oh shoot, like what are we doing? Like
sports don't pay the bills.
Like, yeah, we're not going pro, so yeah. It is what it is. And then you start thinking through, okay, like what college am I going to go to? How does that whole thing look like? And I always got pretty good grades in school. Like I didn't really care. I never really went to class, didn't do homework much. But like somehow I guess I was good at taking tests. Like I just got the work done. So I had pretty solid grades. Fortunate for me, like I had the coding school plus like decent grades, good SAT scores, etc. Ended up going to college in California. I went to UC Berkeley. And out there, honestly, kind of back to what Kyle was saying, is like school's not for everybody. And honestly, school isn't for me. But what I realized is that if you are going to spend time in college, find a place kind of like the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, where you can spend so much time there that you just like learn a lot and meet a whole bunch of successful people. So like honestly, 90% of my time was not spent on school, in school, around school. It was all spent in San Francisco, in like Menlo Park, like Silicon Valley area, you know, with investors, VCs, like tech companies. Like I kind of really learned how that whole entire ecosystem worked. And that was a big reason why I went to UC Berkeley, was for that. Obviously, it's a great school. It's like, I think like one of the best public schools in the whole world. Like you can look that up online.
It's networking.
It's honestly all a networking thing. Like the amount of people that I met out there that have venture funds, raised capital, have started companies, exited companies, etc., was massive. But that was actually the time where I learned e-commerce in a sense. And honestly, where we all kind of learned e-commerce. Like back in high school, we were getting hit with like Shopify and like Oberlo ads. If you know what Oberlo is, good for you. Like you're an OG. Yeah. If you know what Oberlo is, it was a big dropshipping like app you added on Shopify, kind of helped you dropship from AliExpress. Yeah. But I got pushed into that. I'd say. But
sorry to cut you off. Funny story. Oberlo went out of business. So that's how old they are. Is that
I don't even know that.
Oberlo actually went out of business for order fulfillment. So now that's like what we were using for fulfillment. A lot of you guys probably know that if you're in the e-commerce space. But they went out of business. That's like, nuts. And we've only been doing this for like maybe like half a decade. You know.
Yeah, 5-6 years at this point.
Know, so it's like 5-6 years, and and
that's
shit
funny.
Shifts. But like I just want to kind of touch on the college element of it too. Like if you are going to go to school, like just make sure you network like crazy, because I don't know if we want to mention, but we went to an event in the city where we, John bumped into someone that he actually saw speaking at his school, a very big founder who sold his company for a lot of money.
$100 million exit.
$100 million exit. But more importantly, like he had a lot of value to provide, right? And so from nudging into him 5 years ago in college, 4 years ago in college, like we were just able to open up a conversation with someone who is, worth a hell of a lot more than us and worth more than most people we get to talk to on a daily basis. Yeah. And while we don't want to quantify people to their net worth, the quality of conversation is a lot of times can be correlational to their business experience. And in this case, this guy has had a ton.
No, and it was crazy because like I think everyone in the room kind of knew who he was. No one really wanted to approach him like that. And I just took a different angle. I was like, hey man, like I think you spoke in my class 5 years ago, and he was blown away. He was like, how do you remember that? He was like, and then I told him the whole story of like, he shared some like crazy story about like his VC back then, blah, blah, blah. He remembered it all. And just after that, he was like, all right, like follow me on Twitter. Like he followed me back. Pretty sick. And then we just had I think a half an hour conversation. So I think that's the value you can get from kind of going to college and everything too. Definitely have to network. And like, if you can go to a place where there is networks of these people, it would be great. So like, for example, right now, Austin's popping off, Austin, Texas. Miami's great right now. A lot of people working in like Web3, crypto, e-commerce out there, stuff like that. New York's huge, so if you got any schools into New York, definitely a good place to be in that area. And then California, you know, Bay Area is not going anywhere. LA is a great place too. Just like somewhere like a metro area where there's a whole bunch of people who are smart, who are working on like really big ideas that you can just chat with. Like, it's kind of crazy because we live in a small town in New Jersey, right? When I went out there, I used to tell like Kyle and some of our friends, like, I can literally book a call with anybody here. Like, everyone's like 2 to 3 people away from like literally knowing you. So it's like, and people are willing to like spend the time to talk to you, right? It's not like a weird thing. It's not a hard thing to do. You literally just reach out, say, hey, I'm a student at UC Berkeley, or even I'm a student at Rutgers, student anywhere, right? And people are willing to chat, you know, like there's a lot of alumni, a lot of people who want to give back. So it's huge like that. But I'll keep going with the story too. Like, I was at Berkeley, we learned e-commerce, came back to Jersey, kind of told everybody about e-commerce. Funny enough, I remember I told Kyle back in the day, he thought it was all BS. He went back to school, boom, next semester, Kyle dropped out. Did like $150K a month. And he was like,
$250,000, but who's counting?
Whatever the hell it is. But he was like, I'm done. And it was funny because we're all still in school, and he was like, yeah, like I'm done. Like I'm ripping right now. And I was like, all right, sounds good, dude.
Yeah.
Whenever finished school, unfortunately, I was like one of like the COVID babies or whatever. Like, didn't have a graduation, blah blah blah. Who really doesn't really matter that much. I still have the piece of paper for whatever it means. I'd say, and then I don't know, like 3 years ago ish, probably like my junior year at school, we launched like an e-commerce company, like a real brand and everything too. And throughout that whole entire time, we always were doing like affiliate marketing, drop shipping, like a lot of ad buying. Like, we've spent millions on
any business you can think of. We've tried it.
Yeah, we've tried it. Yeah, like a whole bunch of stuff, and like that's part of it, right? You have to try stuff, fail, learn from that, learn from people, and like that's how you kind of get something going. But yeah, we launched that brand around 3 years ago. It still exists, still thrives, has a whole bunch of like a huge subscription base, does really well. And then also what we're in right now is we run a 3PL, like a third-party logistics company, a fulfillment center. So we fulfill for a whole bunch of e-commerce brands, like ship out tens of thousands of orders a month right now. And that's kind of where I spend my time. I know Kyle has an agency and kind of spends a lot of time on there, but we're all both in the same space. We help each other out a lot. Like, a lot of his clients work with us, a lot of our clients work with him. So we're definitely in that e-commerce space. And even now, we're taking a lot of like our experiences, like successes in the space, and pushing that into different ventures too. Like, we're doing some real estate stuff right now, have like some other brick and mortar business we're investing in. So we definitely have a wide plethora when it comes to kind of business and understanding how it works. And obviously, like you said, we're new money, so we're coming up just like you. But I'm sure there's people watching this that are kind of coming up right behind us, that have surpassed us. But definitely a lot of the learnings that we're having here and that we're going to share is applicable across the board. And also some of the people who we're bringing in, just some beasts, right? Like just some heavy hitters, guys who've exited, guys who are running like 10-figure brands at this point. Like, what's the for like $1 billion? Like, is that a bill?
It's $1 billion. They might have $10 billion valuations. I mean,
$10 billion valuations. Like, those guys are doing like 9 figs for sure a year. Like, we have a few billionaires. We have friends that are our age, right? Like, we got people who are worth tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. But we have friends that are our age that are have $15, $20 million net worths, which is a little bit more than ours, but we're getting there. Yeah, but it's but it's crazy because the conversations we have with them, it's almost like we always see eye to eye because the amount of value we can provide them is almost identical to the amount of value that they can provide us. So regardless of like income levels, we all just have so much business experience, and no matter what level you're at, you can learn from someone who's below you, above you, exactly,
sideways. Like, it doesn't matter. You can learn from
and we're excited for this too because like these people, we've been friends with a lot of them for a while, but we've never actually sat down for say like 45 minutes to an hour and like actually like heard their story, heard their learning. So we're excited to even learn from them. Like, you guys will learn so much from them too, so definitely stick around for that. But one quick thing, I don't think do we say our names too?
I mean, we can put them somewhere.
Whatever, like, you guys, I think you probably know Kyle, like, he's famous.
Yeah,
Instagram.
Kyle Russell, we'll put our socials.
Socials,
somewhere
e-commerce
below. Kyle Russell, a lot of people know me as e-commerce Kyle just because like that, like, again, like we talked about, that's my upbringing. And I went a little bit more like the personal branding route in the beginning. This guy was more behind the scenes of it all, which looking back, there's definitely pros and cons of both. I was able to create a lot of great connections. I was able to, and honestly, the connections is the biggest thing. And I was able to create an audience where, a lot of my team members within my marketing agency right now are people that I was able to get through a network on like Instagram, or who trusted me with their business or with their expertise and high level skills. because of the value that I've been able to provide to other people. And so I think that's one of the pros. But the other con is that I spent a lot of time like in my initial e-commerce stages. As soon as I figured it out, it was like I didn't feel like I had this sense of superiority or authority, but I did feel kind of this duty to like help other people.
Oh, for sure.
Or like to be able to give back. But the problem is, and I haven't really talked too much about this, but I think it's kind of common sense, is when you do build up a small audience, you get dozens and dozens of DMs every single day. And so it just depends on how you filter that and and for me personally, I was always someone who I enjoyed helping people, but I didn't see it at the expense of like designated time and allocating energy into my business. So I think the moral of that whole story was, if personal brands are great, especially building a presence for, an e-commerce brand, building it for, a coaching company, like whatever it is, it's all great, and getting attention is a good thing, but being able to do it in an efficient way to where it's not, taking over your entire time, your entire day, your schedule, and where, you're able to do it in a way that's more scalable. For example, YouTube, like this podcast, in 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 50,000, 100,000 people might see this episode.
Definitely.
And, in reality, it took us 30 minutes to an hour to film, and it took us, maybe a couple of weeks of well thought out prep work and things of that nature to get it up and running. But that's like the power of, more of a scalable personal brand and connecting.
Honestly, I'm going to do this one thing real quick. I saw Mr. Beast do this. He was talking about it on a Milk podcast like 2 weeks ago. And he said when like one of his first videos was like, look, within like, I think he said a year, he'll hit a certain goal. So honestly, within a year, I say we're up to like 20,000 subscribers.
Easy. On
this channel, right? 20,000 subscribers. It's on camera. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Our goal is in 1 year, 12 months from now, we have 20,000 subs. We're posting every single week, so this is like on our calendars every single week.
Maybe 2 times a week. We'll see.
We'll see if we get to 2 times a week, but like definitely 1 time a week. We're gonna have a guest every single week to kind of talk through it. We might have our own, just like me and you, kind of riffing off stuff.
Yeah.
But look, like Kyle said, a lot of stuff happens to us during the weeks. Like we hop on a lot of calls, solving a lot of problems, working with a lot of a lot of companies, a lot of business owners, stuff like that. So we just want to take it out of our brains and out of our little group text and like put it out to the world, put it on YouTube, and like honestly, it's just a great experience for all of us. So we're excited to share it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I even want to kind of jump back a little bit super quick into the story of me kind of dropping out, because I know I talk to you guys about it a lot, but a lot of people, are in a position, hopefully you're in a position to where you're actually considering taking a big risk or like a leap, either in business or in life, whatever it might be. For me, when I was in college and I started making money, like I think I met up with some friends in Florida, and those guys were
Tampa, right?
Yeah, and those guys were doing better than me, and so I think that's number one, that's probably one of the most important things is if you're surrounding yourself with fucking bums, you're going to be the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You're going to be a bum, right? Like even if you're trying to work hard to bring them up, there's only so much that you can do. Like you just have to have people around you that are just kind of on that same path and on that same mission. And like because I was exposed to that environment, I was like so much more just like resilient and just ready to kind of attack anything that came my way. And so when I got a taste of that, and it's funny enough, when I was surrounded by this group of guys, I sold that first business that we talked about that I scaled, which I went through a year of just eating shit. In retrospect, that's nothing to succeed in business. Like if you can only eat shit for a year and be profitable, like you're fantastic, right? So some of you guys might have been like dabbling around with business for the last 3 months and be like, why am I not a millionaire? It's because you got to give it time, like in any business. But anyways, I got a wire for like 40 grand, which was like pretty much all profit because I had sold my first dropshipping company. And I was like, holy shit, like there's something about this that I think I can continue to do, and that I don't think is going anywhere anytime soon, despite what my parents might have thought or what family, friends, things of that nature. But yeah, I mean, your circle's super important. When I left, it was scary, but it was also very exciting because it was like, a new thing. I signed a lease for an apartment way too quickly.
Spending way too much money on that lease.
Spent way too much money. There's a lot of things that I think both of us did that we might have done differently. Probably me, maybe a little bit more than you, because he's always been very, very. He's been really good with his money, with his
very
budgeting,
calculated,
very frugal. That's a nice way to put it.
Kyle's very good at just like 0 to 100 really fast, and I'll go like 0 to 100 really slow. We'll both get to 100, but like,
and these guys they'll level me out too. Like when I was younger, and I say younger, this was all really 4 or 5 years ago, so not too long in in hindsight, but you know, I got a car, I got the apartment, I took some of the trips.
Another car.
Yeah.
Another car. 3 beavers later.
And you know, it was all great, but you know, looking back, it's like, you know, there's definitely a lot of things you do differently. Like the most important thing is like have a fulfilling life, you know, and stack up. Like you want to make a lot of money, but you want to keep a lot of money. That's where a lot of people go wrong in entrepreneurship. Like we've had friends go through it. We've had friends that have gone through exits and then just blew some of like majority of the money when it comes to exits. And it's like, you know, you got to be smart, right? Like when you're on the come up, when you're getting ready to make that next risk, you have to make sure that it's calculated. No matter what's coming in, like it's only going to be guaranteed if you don't let it go out, right? So you have to have a system to where money's coming in. You have to be very mindful of letting things go, right? Like just try not to spend a shit ton of money. Don't make the mistakes that I did, which will probably go into a lot more depth on like a different episode or something. But yeah, I mean that I will say though, that risk, that you know, taking that risk and making that leap, it really puts your back, you know, in a position where your back's against the wall, and it's either you make it or, you know, you're fucked, right? Like you have no other option. And so, you know, I'd like to say that I made it, but there's a very long way to go from here. And, you know, hopefully you guys stick around for that journey. But yeah, that's just a little bit of a background as to how I actually like dropped out of school, and it was justified because I was making the amount of money. I told my parents, I was like, all right, I'm going to make this amount of money. If I do, then I'm going to take care of you guys, right? I'm going to send maybe $1,000, $2,000 a month, something like that, to chip in on rent. So, you know, of course they're not going to be like, oh yeah, you got to go back to school. And I'll be like, okay, I'll cut off the, you know, helping you guys out. Like, no, they're always going to support what, you know, my passion is and whatever I want to do. But most parents are in that position where they're like, they want you to succeed. And honestly, the reality of it, most businesses don't succeed, right? So when you take that leap, when you step away, most people are going to be against you, but it's because they care about you, right? It's not because necessarily they're not supportive, but you have to be smart. You have to be very well calculated when you do get into business, when you take those risks. Because if you don't, like you there's definitely a lot of downside if you don't have the calculation behind it.
No, and like one thing I'll add, which I don't think I've ever said to you either, but like full respect on that, because you definitely like. I remember your family wasn't in the best place at a point. You definitely took care of them. You still probably do take care of them too. So I never had to do that. So full respect to that, because like, especially when you're like 19, 20 years old, having to like take care of parents, family, brothers, sisters, stuff like that, houses, rents, etc. I never had to do that. So full respect to you. Definitely different spending habits, but at the same exact time, like, a lot of kudos for you to that. Like,
yeah,
you know,
thank you.
Like, and all of our buddies, like, definitely have always seen that. So, like, that's definitely something that Kyle, like, he's like, he's pretty much in his head, he's like, I figured something out. I figured something out that my family couldn't figure out. I figured something out that, like, even my friends at that point couldn't figure out. Like, he was killing us numbers-wise back in the day. Now, we're similar.
We're similar.
Now we're similar, but, like, back in the day, definitely Kyle was ripping it. He did it, first $1 million month we ever seen. He did it 100%. And, like, he definitely was, like, always, first thing was, like, all right, make sure to take care of my parents, make sure to take care of my brother, sister, etc. So, good for you, bro, on that one.
Thank you. And just to kind of touch on that, like, it's cool because looking back, it's, like, it just kind of depends on the situation that we compare ourselves to. So, it's, like, in our upbringing, it's, like, you know, a lot of families had, you know, you had things handed down to you. You go on, you know, on bi-monthly vacations, you know, you get school paid off, like whatever it is. And in reality, like, even in my position, being in the position to where I was able to help out and where I was even able to like go to school and be surrounded by people who had the opportunity to get into these businesses, like at a young age, like, you know, we're in a really fucking like blessed position.
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like
100%.
It's crazy, you know, like there's I mean, we have people working for us that we'd like to think that we are. I mean, it's not that we'd like to think, we are providing like better lives for Philippines, India, like all these different places, and you know, paying them $6-7 an hour is 3 times what they're actually making there, and they're incredibly grateful. And we're here complaining that we're not at, you know, 2-3 million a year in profit yet, and it's like it's crazy. Sometimes we just have to sit down and reflect on the fact that we got a roof over our heads, we got food on our table,
100%.
like we're not in debt, and like or we're not in bad debt.
Oh, we have debt, but it's all good debt. Yeah, we have a lot of debt, but it's all very good debt.
We're in Grant Cardone debt. We're not in Dave Ramsey debt, right?
Yeah, I don't know who Dave is. That like a chef or something? Who's Dave Ramsey?
You know Dave Ramsey, the talk show. He talks about like all finance. He's about like don't get into debt. Like he's like
Susie Orman kind of guy.
Sure. Yeah, you'll look him up. You know who Dave Ramsey is.
All right.
You know, but you know.
Also, you'll learn I'm not good with like names and faces and stuff. So if you tell me some famous person, I'm like, yeah, I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, well.
Anyways, what are we?
Yeah,
I think we'll spit some game today too.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about like the current climate of I guess direct to consumer e-commerce. We'll try to keep it quick, but you know, in short, that's our upbringing. That's what we know a majority about. So we're just going to talk a little bit about like
current state of
just e-commerce, like how people are building brands, how it's kind of differed for when we kind of got into it and what we found the most success with versus what we've had to transition to in order to have profitable businesses now. And just for some context, because I didn't get too deep into it, he has a 3PL, so he's behind dozens of brands. I have an agency, so I'm behind dozens of brands. And so like we see what's working now in so many different verticals and areas, and it's a lot different than what was working 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Even last year, honestly.
Yeah,
stuff changes quick.
Changes fast. Like there's iOS updates, there's tracking, there's needing better content.
Triple whale, Hyper-Beam,
TikTok didn't exist when we got into all this. TikTok didn't really exist like from an ad perspective until like the end of 2020, which was like I think after I had probably the most success that I've ever had in e-commerce, and I hit like a $1.6 million month. That was like Facebook, Google, and maybe a little bit of email and SMS. Like knowing what I know now, that could have been a $3-4 million month. But anyways, like yeah, I guess current state of e-commerce right now. Again, we talk to, we actively manage, and we actively run our own direct consumer brands like almost 24/7 at this point. And so I'd say the biggest shift has been in the way that people acquire customers. Costs have increased, things of that nature. But I'll touch real quick in terms of those of you who are here who might be from like my audience or who are interested in e-commerce. You're probably like, what the hell is the move right now? Is it drop shipping? Is it building a brand? Like what should I get into? Especially if I have like maybe $5,000 saved up, $10,000 saved up. And if you don't have $5-10,000 saved up, go mow some lawns for 2 months, because there's no excuse to not be able to make $5,000 in the next 30-60 days, unless you're taking care of family or this and that. Just swallow your pride, because you can work a job and you can have a business on the side. You can make $6, $7, $8,000 a month.
Actually, we even talk about this, but honestly, when Kyle, before we even did e-commerce, Kyle was grinding. He was doing
everything,
like DoorDash,
Uber, Postmates,
Uber, all of that. And like honestly, he got all to sign up for like DoorDash back in the day,
summer jobs,
like working at the pool, like
camp counseling,
snow,
lifeguarding,
counseling, all this stuff, like bus boys at restaurants, like waiters at restaurants. I've been a freaking dishwasher once at a restaurant, all these things, like cash stuff on the books. People worked at TJ Maxx before, like just like anything, right? Like if you're young, if you're like under like 22 years old, you should definitely have a job, but don't sit all summer doing absolutely nothing. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
make some money.
And don't strategize creating like the next $1 million brand if you only have $1,000 in the bank, because that's gonna be really hard.
Really hard.
Like there's two things that are kind of on your side when it comes to building a business. One is the amount of capital you have. The other is the amount of time that you have, right? And I would say even a third one that kind of ties into time is your experience. If you're experienced, then you're either going to be experienced with deploying capital into a business, or you're going to be experienced in allocating your time properly to actually know how to build a business without having a shit ton of capital. So like 100%. If you have, like I said, if you have like 5-10K, you're probably thinking, do I build a brand? Do I get into dropshipping? Whatever it might be. I would tell you right now, dropshipping is tough right now. Building a brand right now is tough right now. They're both tough. Any business is going to be tough. But I will tell you that what will have the biggest upside potential is going to be building a brand that you have some inventory for, you have a good customer experience, and you have to start there, right? Like I started, many people start, I still do dropship, but I'm definitely doing a lot more of a transitional period to having inventory-based brands, because you see the valuations, you see the exits, you see the 100%. Happy customers that are way happier than when you scale $1.6 million of a product that is good, but that gets to them after Christmas because it's a holiday product.
And bought in like October or something.
And you get chargebacks and you get this and you that. And that's you want to have a business that makes you a lot of money, but you want to have a business that makes you a lot of money, keeps you a lot of money, and keeps customers coming back, so that you don't have to worry too much about ad spend and cost to acquire customers and things of that nature. Those are always going to be important. But when you build a brand, I think you can build it in a way that can be really fun, but it can also be very sustainable, which 100%. Like drop shipping a lot of times is not.
No, and I think like for a lot of the guys who come from Kyle's audience, probably a lot of drop shippers. And honestly, we all started in that space. That's where we learned this game, right? Drop shipping. And I think there's a lot to learn with drop shipping. I'd say the two biggest things, actually probably the three biggest things. One is media buying. So buying ads like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Google, even like Twitter sometimes, once in a while Twitter could work. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some guys are running Bing ads, like just crazy stuff, right? Just media buying in general is a huge skill that it's easy to learn when you're drop shipping, because you don't have the risk of the inventory, right? So I'd say number one, you can learn from media buying. Number two is you learn website build, landing page build, how to use Shopify, etc. Both of those things you can literally learn with like $100. Yeah. You can run an ad for $50. You can get Shopify for $30.
You can work for an ad agency like for free. You can work for a fulfillment company for free. Like,
exactly.
You know, be willing to kind of step into a position to where you might be able to learn, because there's no amount of money that you'll get paid that will be equivalent of the value that you'll actually learn being in a position like media buying. You know?
Sure. I'd even say that the third thing dropshipping gives you is like the experience, but also like the first ability to like be able to source product. Like being able to like, find a manufacturer in China or whatever country you're supplying, even in the US, and like just like knowing what an MOQ looks like, knowing what like shipping times look like maybe even customizations, stuff like that. And honestly, just communicating with manufacturers is definitely a skill in itself. How to negotiate back and forth, how to get terms with a
I'm going through all that shit right now, you know. I've done this before, but I'm doing a lot more extensively now for like a new brand of mine, and it's like, you know, it's newer territory, but it's so much familiar having already kind of done it at the drop shipping level. Literally the only difference, like I used to think that building a brand was, you know, incredibly complex, but at the end of the day, it's just, I will say it might be a little bit slower of a startup period if you want it to be right. It's, you know,
but it just lasts a lot longer.
Yeah, I mean, it's like literally the only difference is you have to put a little bit more thought and energy into the way that you prep things for a good customer experience, right? So it's not just like, oh, I'm going to source this product, I'm going to steal content, I'm going to give the shitty packaging. It's like, okay, I'm going to spend a month, and I'm going to spend a month figuring out what my product wants to look like, getting some samples, ordering them, getting the package figured out, figuring out where I want to market, and like figuring out like your kind of brand identity. That's kind of, that could take 30 to 90 days maybe, but by the time you figure it out, you pay a couple $100s for content, maybe a couple $100s for like some web development, make a good website, and then, you know, you build out this organic foundation, which you might not have a very good opportunity of being able to do with drop shipping, because, you know, organic is, it leans on the fact that you have a brand that people are going to come back to, right? So you want people to follow you, you want people to, you know, engage with your content, and you want them to come back to buy the other products that you might be selling, or to buy the same product multiple times, right? That's where the concept of like continuity comes into play.
Exactly.
Where like, you know, we've had a lot of success in subscription, and that's where kind of the industry is leaning a little bit, and that's what we kind of have more kind of favoritism towards. But anyways, like to kickstart a brand, it's not as expensive as you would think. It just takes a little bit maybe more time to get it off the ground. But all of the same principles apply. You just order a couple hundred units of inventory. You can even do inventory financing, right? Like these guys have a partner. These guys have an inventory financing partner, and it's like, you know, you pay a couple percentage in interest, but if it's something that you've meticulously and again, going back to the conversation of you've calculated it and it's very well thought out, then you can make sure that you have, you know, $1,000 worth of inventory that you're ordering, you're bringing it in, and it's like, man, I used to scale dropshipping stores to like 10K in a week. And it's like, if I had just, I'm already going to put down, let's say 4 or 5 grand, and I have to float that in cost of goods for like, let's say a $15,000 week. And I'm not even going to get the payment from Stripe until like the next Monday, because I'm doing this all on like a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So it's like, I'm already putting that money down. Like, why wouldn't I just do that for inventory, wait 2 weeks to get it? But now I'm going to have, you know, I'm going to have more margins because I'm going to be able to cut costs, or I'm going to be able to have a lot of those customers come back and maybe, you know, reduce my chargeback rate from 3% to like 0.5%, get very little returns.
Zero, honestly.
Yeah, like,
and like, I think another little thing that we can like, people could try out is I'm a big advocate of, because it's sometimes it's hard to find a product that's going to work. Obviously, like dropshippers know, like they're always looking for the next product. Yeah. A good thing you can always do, which like I recommend to a lot of people who are going into like e-commerce and D2C and stuff like that, is like test before you go and buy bulk, right? So yeah, make a landing page, find a product. You can even drop ship the first like 50 to 100 orders.
Or you could pre-order it.
You could exactly. Yeah. You can do pre-orders. There's a lot of different ways you could do it, right? Say you run a pre-order on your Shopify store. I've seen a lot of guys have success with this. They sell the first 100 units within the first week. Boom, they place a PO in China for say 1,000 units. Within 3 weeks, that inventory is in the U.S. and we're fulfilling it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like there's obviously like the first 100 customers had to wait an extra like week or two. But think about what you just did after that. The next 900 and now have a good experience where they
the way that I look at it, and it's a good point, because like we work with some brands that have that have a subscription element, and they almost feel guilty for like running that up, right? If they might have like a 2 or a 3% customer return rate, or like a 0.5% chargeback rate, because innately and naturally you're going to have that. But you have to look at it from the perspective of, you know, you're collecting this money now, and it might be at the expense of 3%, 5% of your customers, so that your other 95% can have an incredible experience. And that's part of business. Like, you're never going to find someone who's like, you're never going to find 100% of people that are like, oh my God, I love Apple, right? Like, Apple's just the best thing ever. You're always going to have both sides, right? Like, Apple's going to have people that are like, I hate that I have to pay for iCloud. I hate this. I hate that. At the end of the day, though, if a majority of your customers are happy, you're running a good business.
Exactly, 100%. Like, even the ones that did buy early, there's easy ways to kind of like remedy that, where it's like, hey, once they reach out to you saying, hey, like, where's my order? Just hit them back, be like, hey, look, completely apologize. I'll refund half of your order. You get it half price your product, right? You do something like that, you actually have a real relationship, a real like communication channel with your customers.
Yeah,
that makes them come back and buy again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And you can be honest and transparent, because the only times customers are going to piss you off is when you're not being real with them, right? So if you're like, listen, like, inventory is getting delayed, it's going to take a couple of weeks to get to you, then you say, if you want to cancel your order, like, we don't blame you. If you want to stick it out with us, we're going to make sure that we treat you right? So if they're like, you know, I want to get it canceled, okay, no problem, right? But if they're like, you know what, I'll wait for it, like, it's really cool, they're going to get it, and they're going to be happy that you kind of filled them in on it. And you know what you can do? You can say, hey, listen, since, like, honestly, you were one of our earlier customers, you know, because we're a startup, we're a new brand, we're a small business. So number one, we appreciate your order. Number two, would you mind filling out like a super quick survey just to talk about your experience, right? How was the packaging? How was the product quality? Like, you know, I know that the shipping might not have been the best, but how was overall your customer experience? Then, were you happy? Were you transparent with you?
And then what you do is just make a little promo code that says "We are sorry 30," and you send it to them. They're going to laugh.
30% of them are going to use it.
We are sorry 30, and they're all going to use it again to buy again. You know what I mean? So, like, look at that. Now you just acquired another order, in a sense, without having to pay Facebook, without having to pay Instagram.
Even without the best in the world customer experience, right?
Literally. Like, yeah, exactly. If you're real with people, if people see a real brand, a real face behind actual, like, the business that they're buying from, they're a lot more prone to come back and buy again. They're a lot more, like, prone to, like, empathize as to, like, your situation. You just have to understand that, right? Like, business is all about just people. It's like, literally, it's all people. E-commerce people think they can sit behind Shopify, sit behind Ads Manager, and just like click away. Obviously, you could do that, but at the real core of it, it's all just people, right? Like, people are the ones who are paying for it. People are the ones who are shipping it. People are the ones who are making it, right? So if you can actually build those bonds between the people where they trust you, you trust them, build real trust in between, and that's how you get people to rebuy again. That's how you get people to give you good feedback, where it's like, hey, this product was great. Actually, I'd love if you launch this new product, right? Think about that. If you can get your customers to start telling you new products to launch, you have your first 500 orders on the new product. There's like so many ways you could do it once you really figure out the whole customer channel.
We do that at the agency a lot. It's like a lot of people don't leverage their existing customer base, but you know, if you do want to start a brand and you're like, well, how do I know that people are going to like my product? How are this, that, whatever? First of all, you got the power of TikTok, you got Reddit, you got Facebook, you have social media at your expense. So you can literally, or at your disposal rather. So you can literally say, hey, I have this product idea, right? Let's say you want to sell, I don't know, I'm trying not to think of a product innately that either we sell or that we know someone personally that sells. But, you know, let's say you're trying to sell magnetic eyelashes, okay? The first thing you're going to do is just do a little bit of competitor research. Say, listen, is someone else selling this profitably? Or does it appear as though someone else is selling it profitably? If the answer is yes, then there's probably a chance that you can go ahead and sell it. But a big part of e-commerce is you want to have some differentiation factor, right? You want to be unique. You want to do it in a unique way. You want to present it. You want to market it in a unique way, where even if it solves maybe the same problem, you're just marketing it in a different way, and you can somehow differentiate your competitors. And you don't want that to be price, right? Like, you don't want to commoditize yourself. You want to figure out a way to create more value, right? If you guys don't know, like, Alex Hormozi, he's a very big advocate of this, where it's like, you know, that guy could probably sell ice to Eskimos. It's kind of like the vibe that I'm getting at, in terms of you can create a product that, you know, has literally the same, for example, Proactive, right? They were a company that they're still a company, probably more than $1 billion now, that has a bunch of acne type products. And they had some, you know, identity behind the products, or a process that they called, you know, the blackhead pinpointing technology, right? And they had this proprietary blackhead pinpointing technology. Every fucking, you know, product that's just like theirs on the market does that exact same thing. It's just that they gave it a name, and they allowed, you know, they were able to differentiate themselves from competitors. That's what allowed them to thrive. So again, going back to the initial point, so we don't go too off topic. If you have an idea and you want to test it, you honestly don't even have to spend money doing it. You go on Reddit, you go on TikTok, you post some videos, and you just, if you can have 50 people even who are relevant to the product that you're selling, that's what we call statistical significance. So if you have 50 people, even just that few people, I have more than 50 family members, between cousins, uncles, aunts, whatever. Like, if you have 50 people that would be somewhat interested in your product, again, we have the power of social media, and you get a survey on all of them on what they would like to see in a product like that, if they would even buy it, what price points they would buy it. You could do all this stuff before you even launch it, and that really doesn't cost any money. That just costs time. It goes back to the discussion that we had in terms of you either have to have one or two things in business. You have to have money, or you have to have time to be able to just relentlessly deploy things and test things. Because like now you have TikTok organic, right? Like you can run up a store to 100K a month. Like we had a client of ours. It was actually a client of both of ours who they did 300-400K in a single day, or 300 or 400K in like a 2-day time period, through the power of TikTok, right? And
free too.
Exactly. No ad spend, probably 60-70% margins, and that's life changing. And now you build a system and a framework that you can repeat for other brands, right? But like the point is, that's in terms of building a brand, it's never been easier, but it's never been easier to start a brand. But that doesn't mean that it's easy to scale it. There's a lot of, if you put in a lot of time, you put in a lot of effort, and I think the most important thing is if you stick it through for a long period of time, you'll almost be able to make any good, unique, like tested product that has had a bit of success during its kind of initial launch period. You're going to be able to build that into something really great if you just stick it to
Definitely. And I'd say a lot of what we chat about is like the drop shipping world and stuff like that. But I think the second piece of it is also the brand world, right? And like it's called like D2C at this point, like direct to consumer. I think once you leave that dropshipping world, you kind of fall into that category. And like Kyle was saying before, kind of like earlier on, that's where the real value wealth creation is established.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that this thing called like multiples, right? If you've never heard of what a multiple is, just like look into it, look up what an EBITDA multiple is or a revenue multiple. Pretty much how these things are valued is that once you go and sell these businesses, like actual legitimate brands with actual inventory that have been around, say, for more than, 18 months at a point, right? Like it's a legitimate business, has real customers, returning customers, like low chargeback rate, like low return rate, all these type of like good things. Then you can actually exit for a multiple. Multiple means that, say, for example, e-commerce right now, I think e-commerce is looking at like a 2.5 to 3x EBITDA multiple. EBITDA is a famous, fancy acronym for profit, right? Yeah. So in a sense, whatever your profit is times 3 is what your business is actually worth. Now in the dropshipping world, if you have a store for like say 70 days or 75 days, it's pretty much worth nothing. It's worth the email list, maybe the pixel data, and honestly, even that's worth nothing because you can't even log back into the Shopify. You don't even have a payment processor at that point.
Yeah, you get banned by Facebook.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of like rabbit holes you go down, but the brand side on the end of it has equity to it, right? There's a customer base, there's a real social media accounts, there's an email list, there's a subscriber base, there's legitimate inventory that actually has a real value that's like actually could be traded for like dollars at a point, right? Yeah. That's where the exits happen. For example, I think we were talking about once recently a brand called Hero Cosmetics got acquired for I think either 640 or 680 million, like really recently. And how did they do that? They've been around for a few years. I'd say 3 to maybe 5 years. I don't know the exact timeline. But they have real brand equity. They're in Target. They're in retailers. They're in CVS. I think they're in Walgreens. They have a D2C presence. They have an Amazon presence. They built multiple channels of revenue, of EBITDA, that actually made them exitable, right? So like the founder walked away with who knows how many millions off of that exit.
Yeah, it's $630 million
$630 million exit. And that's because... Why? Because she didn't just like drop ship 30 days, try to make like a 50K bag. No, like she built a legitimate business with a customer base, with employees, with systems, with partners, with like stuff, They also only raised $16.2 million in funding. There you go. She raised $16 million and sold for $630 million. Obviously, she didn't own all the company at that point, but I'm sure she owned at least half of it at that point, right? So there's another one called Supply. It's like a razor company. They sell like one piece like metal expensive razors. They were on Shark Tank a few years back. I think they got a deal with like Hirschevek for like $250,000, something like that.
Yeah.
Recently on Twitter, I just saw that they were bought by an aggregator, one of like the Amazon like e-commerce aggregators. I'm sure for a healthy multiple, few $1 million. Great brand. Like right back to our whole entire story, right? The brand, they have great packaging, great experience, great founders, like great story, like longevity. They've been around for probably 5 years at this point, right? And they have happy customers. That all goes back to building brand equity, having a multiple to exit on, right? You can't do that with dropshipping, but with dropshipping, you can learn the skills necessary to build that, and then that's a whole different ball game, right? Like you have to have inventory, you have to have a real brand, employees, etc. But all doable, like 100% all doable, right? Like even Kyle said, we were in New York City at an event last week, whole bunch of brand owners, right? And all these guys, they have inventory, they have 3PLs, they have,
and most of them started drop shipping.
Most of them are literally like honestly, some of the best ones are all started as drop shippers, right? Because they were able to like quickly test for demand, see that it actually works on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, etc.
Just quickly pivoted.
And then, yeah, exactly. Then use like that like proven fact of like somewhat product market fit and pivoted to inventory, and then just like scale from there, right? Like they didn't just jump in and say, hey, let me buy like 10 grand worth of inventory. Like no, like they tested it. Within a month or two, they kind of figure out, okay, this is going to work. This is the ad that could work. Let me buy some inventory, take a little bit of risk, and start building off of that. And then boom, like they look like overnight successes. They're not. They've spent years and years building this out, but they probably started in a similar space that you did. You know what I mean? But like that's where the real wealth creation is, right? When you get an exit multiple, that you can multiply revenues and EBITDA to that and exit for massive numbers. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, I'm working on a brand right now, and I'll tell you what, like it's slower, but it's more fun than drop shipping because all that you're thinking about is holy shit, like I'm so confident I can scale this to $250,000 a month plus, and you can do it with much higher margins than you can at a regular drop shipping store, with much higher customer satisfaction, and even the margins on the front end, the cash flow, it's nothing compared to what you can exit for, you know. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna get ready to wrap it up soon, but we'll close.
Do we have anything else here or no?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna close it off by just saying if you are getting into drop shipping, a great place to look is where other people aren't, or where people aren't as, you know, I guess polluted, which is the European markets. So that's true. Look into that. I even have like a YouTube video. I'll probably drop my channel somewhere, but if you literally just search e-commerce Kyle on YouTube, you'll find it, and just look for the video on foreign markets because it's such an underrated thing. Like the objective is to do things that other people aren't doing, or to do it better in an area where they are doing it. So if you do bring a brand into the US, or you bring a brand into Canada, Australia, wherever it is, you know, you gotta expect that there's going to be competition, and that you're gonna work really hard in order to earn those customers. Whereas if you are drop shipping and you want to go into a less competitive territory, because it's very competitive in the United States, go to Germany, go to France,
Italy, Spain, Greece.
You don't necessarily have to go there physically, but I took a nice little Europe trip, and to be honest, I learned a lot about different cultures, especially like in Paris and things like that. Like I would genuinely ask people like, what payment methods do you use, right? You notice people using cards. Are they paying mostly in cash?
Klarna, right?
Like,
over there, what are they using?
Yeah. There's Klarna. There's like
PayPal.
Some of them are more familiar with like Afterpay things and stuff like that. But you familiarize yourself with the market in a different place, and it might seem intimidating at first, but again, moral of the story: you go somewhere where there's either less competition, or where maybe drop shipping is less looked at in a negative light. You can have a lot of opportunity to still kind of prove a concept of a product there, and then again you take the proof of concept and then you package it and you create it into something that's even bigger and more meaningful here in the United States, or wherever you're from, wherever you're watching this from. Yeah, but
that's good, man. Yeah, no, it all makes sense. And like e-commerce is not dead at all. Two people say that, like iOS 14, it's not dead at all. It's not going anywhere. Amazon keeps growing every single year. As long as Amazon's growing, everything else is going to grow. Shopify's getting bigger and bigger every year. So honestly, it's probably like early right now in e-commerce.
In hindsight, yeah.
It's honestly early right now in hindsight. Like it's only been around, say, like probably less than a decade at this point.
Yeah.
So like the ecosystem we're in with like Facebook and Shopify, etc.
Apple Ads is fucking coming out.
Apple Ads is coming soon.
There's platforms that don't even exist yet that are going to be new opportunities to advertise.
Yeah, like YouTube Shorts is popping off right now. Definitely going to be a good place to buy ads soon. TikTok's amazing. Like they're definitely fixing a lot of their stuff. Like their pixels getting better, their ads managers getting better. It's going to be like Facebook in 2017.
It's crazy. It's crazy how fast they built that algorithm up. Like in hindsight, it's like maybe 3 years old, like the actual advertising component platform of it, and it's like almost as good as Facebook now.
Oh, 100%. So definitely a lot of good stuff going on. We're going to be here every single week, kind of going through it. I think we have a guest next week, right?
Yeah. We'll save the surprise for when they actually come on, but it's gonna be fun. You guys are gonna learn a lot. But yeah, I guess to just kind of wrap everything up, just to summarize, if we didn't make it very clear, the goal for this podcast is to help you get more insights into things that you might not actively be engaged in conversations with people who are doing these things, right? So these are people on the front line in the trenches who are telling you day to day what's going on, and also sharing a lot of their failures, right? And I think that's a super valuable thing, is because if you can learn, there's two really great ways to learn and how to take on a situation. It's to either learn from, number one, your own failures. That's going to be one that sticks with you very, very well, but it's going to be very costly. The number one best way to do it is to learn from someone else's failures. So you don't have to lose that money. You don't have to or lose the opportunity cost, right? It might not be like a tangible loss, but you kind of get where I'm going. By us bringing on guests and even just talking about our experiences, there's a lot that can be learned. We'll be sharing that, those trials and tribulations with you, either ones that we've already experienced or the ones that we experience day to day as we're both building multiple companies.
Exactly. Well, I think this is a good end to our first episode of New Money Talks, right?
Yeah.
Solid
Thank
you. Good job, Kyle.
Thanks for watching until the end, and
please like, subscribe, comment.
Subscribe, blow it up, share with a friend who needs to see this and who needs to get a kick in the ass
off the couch.
To get up, get out, get after it. I love saying that because there's too many people that, especially with COVID, like people are like just hermit crabs. They're stuck in. Now it's time to break out of that and step it up and step on the gas, because God knows where the market's headed. God knows where the economy's headed. All you can trust is yourself and your ability to create something that can produce cash flow, and that is recession proof. And we're here to help you figure out what that might be for you. But anyways, that concludes the first official episode of New Money Talks, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.